Hello everyone, Cody here. Welcome to RSG Outdoors. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to tie the only 4 fishing knots you will need for pretty much any application in fishing. I'm also going to show you how to make a small tool for less than $1 that you can use to practice these knots without using up any of your terminal tackle, risking damaging your hands with fishing line, or risking getting a hook stuck in your hand. This little tool is great, especially if you have kids like I do, and you want them to be able to practice their fishing knots so that one day they can tie all their own rigs without having to need your assistance. So first of all, I'm going to show you the little tool. And it looks like this. All it is a small piece of wire with an inline ring on one side and an offset ring on the other. And the reason we do an inline and an offset is because when it comes to hooks, we generally have offset eyes and we have inline eyes. Now the way you make this ring is you're going to need something to wrap the wire around. I'm just using a 3/8 drive extension. You're going to need something to cut the wire, so a pair of wire cutters and a pair of pliers to hold it down. And the wire is just a piece of a wire clothes hanger. This is one that I've already cut, but I'm going to show you how to make this thing start to finish. So you just need a piece of the wire. Get a relatively straight piece, like so. You then just need to hold it against the round object that you've chosen. For me, my extra pair of pliers fit perfectly inside of the drive socket, so I can hold the wire and then bend it around like so. Just like that. And then you can take and kind of close it up. And once again, once completed, mine looks like this. Offset eye on one side, inline eye on the other. And it's actually very strong. Like, I can pull on this pretty hard and it doesn't really come out of shape or destroy it. So if you're just trying to practice knots, or your kids are trying to practice knots, this thing is great. I also highly recommend that you get a nice colorful piece of paracord or 550 cord. It works great for videos like this because it's easy for you to see. It's easy for you to see how it's being manipulated and how everything kind of lays together. And it's also something that you can untie and retie over and over again, which for your kids or for yourself for practice is great because you're not actually using up anything. So now that we've gone through how to make the tool and what you'll need to actually accomplish this, let's look at our first knot. This is probably the most common knot in fishing, and it's called a clinch knot. In order to tie the clinch knot, all you have to do is take your ring end of your hook, swivel, or your little tool here, and the tag end of your line. Run it through the loop so that it can hang freely, and then cross the tag end over the rode line however many times you're comfortable with. For this purpose, I'm going to do 3, and the reason I'm going to do 3 is because paracord is rather thick. The same principle will apply whenever you're doing this with fishing line. Thicker lines will not accommodate as many wraps as a thinner line will. Braid, you can get away with a large number of wraps just because its friction coefficient isn't quite as high. It will slide very easily along itself. Monofilament, once you get up into 50-pound line, 4 or 5 wraps is really pushing it. Thinner lines, 7, 8. But if you do at least 3, your knot's going to be more than strong enough. So after you make your wraps, you're going to take your tag end and push it through the loop that you made above your ring. And then just kind of pull it tight. You can kind of push the line to snug it up as you go. And you may have to do this with actual fishing line as well. When you do this with actual fishing line, always wet your knots. The end result looks like this. It's a very fast, easy to tie knot, and as I said, it's probably the most common one used in fishing, especially amongst novice anglers. Applications where you may not want to use this knot are where you're using extremely thin line or you're worried about breaking strain. The reason for that is the clinch knot is one of the weakest knots in fishing. It is so because you only have a single point against your hook or against your object that you're tying to, and then you have multiple points of tension pressing on that main line in multiple directions. So for the second knot, I'm going to show you the improved clinch knot. For this knot, and I'm counting this and the original, or the first knot, as one of the four that you need to know, just because this is a slightly improved variant on the clinch knot because it adds a safety knot into it automatically. So the way to do it is take your ring, take your tag end, and slide it through, just like we did before, and you're going to do your wraps again. I'm going to do 3 once again. Now this time, you're going to slide your tag end through, but you'll notice when you do, it creates another little loop on top here. You're going to bring the tag end around and put it through that loop as well, and then shore everything up, just like last time. Now we get a similar looking knot, but you'll notice the tag end is now pointing upward. What we've done is tied a built-in safety knot into a normal clinch knot. This doesn't really change the strength of this knot, it just prevents it from coming untied if you're using heavier lines and you have a shorter stack of knots stacked on top of one another. Sometimes those can come undone or get loosened up just with casting and various tensions that you're applying to it, sliding around on the hook like this. And those knots can come undone sometimes. So the improved clinch knot just gives you that little added safety by clamping down on that tag end. Now this second knot is by far my favorite knot. If I had to choose one knot to tie from now until the end of the time, this is the fishing knot that I would choose, and it's called the Palomar knot. And the reason I would choose this knot is percentage-wise, it is the strongest fishing knot you can tie. Now there are some wraps that you can do, and I'll get into one of those later, that aren't technically knots, so they have 100% strength, but a Palomar knot is a solid knot that doesn't slide, and it retains 98% strength, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. So here's how we're going to tie it. You take the ring or the eye of your whatever you're tying to, and you're going to make a loop in your line. So I've got my tag end, my rode end, and I've made a loop. In knot tying, this is called a bite. So I'm going to make a bite in my line, and I'm going to push the bite through the eye. And I'm going to give myself enough room to work with here so that I can tie an overhand knot. Just like that. So once that overhand knot is tied, I still have a bite on this side. I'm going to take and reach through the bite and grab what I'm tying to and pull it through. Now I'm going to let everything snug up. Paracord can be just a little cumbersome with this, but it's great for the practice. And if you work with it a little bit, it'll bite down just like your fishing line. Now, if you look at this knot, what you'll see is on the ring, there are 2 lines from the main line. And there are 3 lines pulling down on the main line to keep it tight. That is what gives this knot all of its strength. We're doubling up on the amount of line that's in contact with our object, and we're tripling up on the amount of line that is applying pressure to the object. So that spreads the force out a lot more than if we just had a single line like we do with our clinch knot. It works really well. I use this anytime I'm tying on bass lures just because I can swap out really quickly. It's also the knot that I use when I'm tying my main line to my swivels because I trust it for its strength. All right, the next knot we're going to tie is a snell knot. And I think this is technically called a reverse snell because I'm tying after the main line has already been connected to a swivel or my leader line has already been connected to a swivel or what have you. This is primarily used when tying on a circle hook that has an offset eye. And the reason for that is a snell knot allows you to pull in line with the shank. If you have an offset eye circle hook like this, you want the line to travel in line with the shank as it pulls so that it pulls straight. The straight pull of a circle hook is what lands it in the corner of the mouth and keeps it from gut hooking fish. So the way to do that take your offset eye side of the little tool that you made, and you're going to slide your line through it, pulling enough through that you have to work with along the shank of your hook or your little tool here, and you're going to make a loop. So now I've just made a loop on the inside of my ring. I'm then going to take my tag line and I'm going to wrap it around the shank of my hook and put it through the loop that I made. And I'm going to do this several times. I'm then going to hold the tag end and the shank and pull the main line. Now if you'll notice, that hangs straight with the shank of my object. That knot is nice and symmetrical, and everything's kind of stacked on top. Now this is called a compression knot. It's not a true knot, as nothing is really tied to the line. This can actually untwist and come undone. What keeps that from happening while you're fishing is pressure. So when the fish pulls, it actually tightens the line down on itself, or when you pull, the same effect is applied. The next knot I'm going to show you is one that you'll need if you're going to tie anything like this. So if you look at this rod, I have several jig heads all tied in line. And I use that for either crappie fishing, some bass fishing applications, and then also anytime I go fishing for skipjack. So there's a couple of different knots you can tie for building one of these rigs, one of these multi-hook rigs, but the easiest one to learn how to tie is called a figure 8 knot. A figure 8 knot is a great knot because it is load bearing, which means it will not give or slip against itself, and it will not give or slip if you pull on either of the tag ends. So the way to make this work, if you wanted to tie multiple jig heads on, take your main line and run it through the eye of your object. Once you get to a point where you want to tie the lure on, or you want to stop the jig, you're going to make a bite so you have a little loop, just like so. So it's dangling in the loop. You're then going to take that loop and you're going to cross it over itself, like so. All right, you're then going to bring it all the way around and go through. Now, that's why it's called a figure 8 knot. Everything looks like a nice little intertwined figure 8. So then when we tighten this up, we're load bearing on this end, and if we pull, everything kind of hangs nice and smooth. Now this knot won't slide if you're pulling with your rod or if a fish is pulling on a lower hook. This knot will not slip. If you simply tie an overhand knot, it will slip, and I'll demonstrate that for you now. So this is the figure 8 knot, and this is what you want to tie, and you can tie multiple ones of these in series. So I showed you the figure 8 knot with the paracord, but I want to demonstrate to you what happens if you only tie an overhand knot to make the loop. And if I show you that with the paracord, the friction coefficient is too high, and I can't physically pull the knot apart, at least not without a little bit of mechanical advantage. So I'm going to show you with a piece of fishing line here. This is a 20-pound fluorocarbon fishing line. So all you're going to do is take and make the loop and tie an overhand knot in it. Remember how I said this is not the knot you want to tie? But it looks, you might say, oh, but I've still got a loop and I've still got line and I can continue to tie on things. Why can't I just use that? That looks so easy. Well, the figure 8's really easy as well. However, if you tie multiple lines to this, watch what happens to this loop. When I pull, that loop comes apart. If you have a hook in there, what's going to happen is that hook is now going to be free sliding, and I don't know how well you can see, but the line is really messed up now. That's really abraded looking. It looks really stretched out and messed up. I'm not gonna trust it to hold a decent fish. I'm not even gonna trust that to hold a small fish. Now you can learn how to tie a dropper loop or something like that, which will accomplish the same thing, but a dropper loop is really complicated and it often causes damage to the line in the tightening process. Whereas the figure 8 knot, it's a common knot used in the military. I've used it a lot for that purpose. It's a common knot used by climbers because you can tie it anywhere. It's very simple and it's load bearing and it does not slip no matter how hard you pull on either side of the line. So I'll show you how to tie that figure 8 one more time just because it's so useful. Take your eye, take your main line, run it through, get to the point you want to work at, make your loop, cross the loop over itself, bring it all the way around, and bring it back through. Look at your knot, see that you've got a nice figure 8 shape. That way you'll know you did it right. Pull it tight. Now no matter how hard you pull, nothing changes. Your lure will stay right there. I can go down here and tie on another one. Let's tie on the little one we used for demonstration purposes. So if this is the end connected to my rod, there's my first one. Come down to where I want to put the loop. Cross it over itself, all the way around, and then through the loop that I made. I can look at it, got a nice pretty figure 8, tight. And now I have 2 tied in line, and I could keep going. I can tie as many as I want. Make sure if you're doing this kind of thing and you're fishing with multiple hooks, you fish with as many as is legal in your area, don't exceed it. Obviously you can go fewer if you like. Generally 3 is the legal limit here in Tennessee, unless you're using a sabiki rig, and then I believe it's 6. I generally don't go more than 3. Well everyone, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like it, click like, hit subscribe, and click the little bell so you get notified whenever we add a next video. And we'll catch you next time on our SG Outdoors.